Let's
right?
get this party started.
Absolutely.
Awareness, brother. I love that word, man. It's so key
Yes.
when you really get it and understand it, man. And then you start seeing everything around you and you're very aware. You can make big changes, man.
In a different way. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us once again for our how-to sessions. As you can see coming in, we were already involved in a passionate exchange of shares and growing knowledge and insights. We usually get together on these days to openly discuss subjects around marketing to consolidate the foundational knowledge that we need to be successful in this business. My name is Obio Virgil. For those who are new to me, I am standing in as your marketing consultant, brand success manager. I'm joined with my co host, Robert the Blakester. That's a cue. We basically will be, well, I use that. It's okay. We I will be offering everything that we do in recap links. I'll drop all the links in the chat, and I definitely recommend you take a look at it. Yesterday, for example, I missed the session with Robert. There was great value in there, and I was able to catch up without looking back at the uh, recaps. So take advantage of that. It's definitely there so that you don't miss the flow of the conversation, even if you're not able to uh, be in the fold of the energy when it's happening. Going back and keeping track of these conversations to stay level with the community is something that definitely we recommend. So, as usually, in good tradition, we'll start with any general now side question that we have. Also, ask your question directly in the chat. The Blakester will step in, and if needed, we'll bring the conversation for a general share. So we'll start as usual with the first round. Do we have any questions, general questions, particular questions on the use of Now Site for those who are new to using the tool? So going once, going twice, going three times for silence sold. But as usual, during the conversation, you will be able to bring those questions forward if it brings some things to mind while we're covering the topic of the day. I, for those who have been with us the past session, I had the intention of going into the CRM with you. We will be going into the CRM as well. We covered the conversation around branding, around structuring our approach so that we know the framework to use so we're never lost in the process that we're following. And before we dive into the CRM application, because at this point, what we're going to be really doing is going back to the workflow, right? We have gained understanding of what it is to build our brand and the necessity of that to step into the conversation aspect and the interaction, the building the relationship with the client through our marketing asset, right? And we have understood the framework of that. But we also need to understand what the concept of the prospect journey is. I've thrown that term around a couple of times, and it has been also in the inner lines of certain questions. For example, I have the client, what do I do next? Right? If you have mapped out your prospect journey, the question would be, I got the client and I know he will be doing this next, and I will be meeting him there, right? These questions that technically have been asked before or have been at the basis of what comes even before the client experience or the prospect journey, your business setup, right? As usual, to put things in a visual concept and give you material to hold on to, I have already put some documents in the team content, not in the masterclass session, but in the actual course library. a lot of what we did before will come into play. So the next round of exchange documents will be in this section leading up to our next masterclass. By the way, to stay on track with the agreed schedule, the next masterclass will be the following Friday. All agreed? So on the calendar date, that would be the 18th, correct? Second week of the month. Perfect. So I will organize the rollout for that soon. We will be looking at CRM workflow at this stage since we have enough baggage to go through the different tools that Now Site offers, which are also the different step of the workflow that we're following, the business process being aligned, at least as far as we are concerned, network marketing being aligned with that. So I shared two things. I created two, a new section here, business process, right? Take a look at when you're navigating, you want to go to the last section here. And there are two documents there, the prospect journey mapping and the prospect journey map for online marketers, right? Take a look at both of those. I will show them what they are, and we will discuss or review this together. So let me just, can everybody see this? Now, as you see here, I'm going to let this on the board so you can absorb it. There are no terms on this board that technically we are not familiar with. However, in our mind's eye, all these are jumbled up. I know so because they are jumbled up in my mind as well. When I'm looking at my business, at first, all these will hit me because these are the key words around which the expertise, the process, whatever it is, the tools are used or selected. But to understand and follow properly what I'm doing, I need to organize this. This actually comes from knowledge transfer as well. A lot of the inspiration from this course came from the different exposure to this manufacturing course that I'm taking. Again, looking at their lean operational mind frame when they are approaching things. They have this understanding that for an organization to be efficient, everything has to be on the board for everybody to see, including you. And the first thing that you want to put on the board is your roadmap as a business. Because when and you can see here, there's a lot of things happening here, but it's a very simple format. There's just a few arrows showing you the relationship or the flow of actually operation when it's happening and a different interaction there, right? Everything starts with the business and the relationship that he wants to create with the client, right? If you look this on one side, these are the natural things that you have to do to be business ready. You have to set up the business. You have to outline the business process, set them up, right? This business is meant to promote an opportunity, a service, or product. So that has to be set up. Depending on the approach, you will have specific point of sales. And of course, after those point of sales, you will have a follow-up relationship that you have to build with these customers. And we pretty much understand that. But then in between those, I tossed in these words because when we are doing our exercise from the interaction, from the experience of the past conversation, all this in our head is happening at the same time. When it's not, right? When we started here a couple of weeks back, we were talking about branding. And that had to do essentially with the business setup. And of course, these have interconnecting relationship with all the rest of the process, right? When you are building your process, this is where strategy comes in, right? Often enough, we think that the process is resumed to understanding the use and the knowledge of our CRM. But what is your CRM? Which CRM are you using? How do they integrate, right? Because, for example, the CRM that you might be using to handle the first client acquisition, the interest, the introduction, the onboarding, that won't be necessarily the same CRM that you will be using when dealing with the point of sales. Remember, well, during the course of our previous conversation, when we were addressing the sales flow and we started discussing the CRM, the question was asked, what if I have two CRMs? And the answer was, well, in the marketing or the network marketing industry, we always have two CRMs. We have the CRM that comes with the opportunity, which is in fact also the point of sale in most cases. And then we have the CRM that we will use to reinforce our marketing strategy beyond what we are given with the business package, which the brand and the strategy. Right? When we are marketing, what are we doing? When we are marketing, we're not technically branding. We are exercising the brand, the strategy that came before. When we're building a relationship, the retention relationship, this is when the repetition of our marketing exercise, of our branding strategy, starts kicking in. Right? So we have to understand these words, but we also have to organize them to follow the process that we need to be efficient. Knowing is just half the battle. There's applying, there's fighting the battle, there's being in the trenches. And when we're in the trenches, there can be confusion. I know all these things, but when I'm in the field, I'm having trouble organizing them. Simply put, you haven't mapped out your process, your workflow. Very important. Same thing. This is part of a grid. When you're building your business setup, and there's also a concept that came from this other training that I'm taking. Uh, it's in, again, manufacturing, but this is something that often all of us will be coming to do because we're exposed to different things and we're marketers. So we have a frame of mind. We have disciplined ourselves to see the word a certain way. So when we are introduced to different process, we look at it, well, this is how I understanding, and this is how technically it would apply in the marketing sense, right? And in the production there, they have this concept called pooled production, meaning that they only pool what the client is interested in and demands at that time to avoid waste or surplus in production. Well, when we're setting up our business, when we were looking at our brand, one of the first thing that we were looking at to actually set up the brand and the business was the client audience, their interest. And all the conversation that followed was about speaking to that interest, about managing that interest. This is where your journey starts. What am I doing? What am I saying? What have I foretold will come to the client? And how does that align with my process, with my service, with my point of sale, with my client support? This is also important to understand, especially in this age of AI. Sorry, I got so passionate, I started hating on the table. We, and wow, I wanted to share this on Monday, but I got the AI fever. Now it's like, where's my AI? How many I need? I'm going to need more. Why? Because even in the process of automating your approach, there are certain part of this process that you won't necessarily be able to fully automate. And when you do, you will automate them for the time being until you're ready or need to scale. right? I'm using AI, open AI that everybody has come to discover and love. And by the recommendation of our truly here, the Blakester, I got the bug for Namus. And at first, remember when you spoke to me about it, I was like, oh, it's going to be the coding thing and everything. And then in 1 week, or not in 1 week, in one day, when I gave it the go, I was like, okay, enough bias. Let's give it a run and see what this thing can do for me. In one day or in one session, for all the credit that I had, because I ran out of credit, I went into creative frenzy. I was able to solve a problem that I had for years in my interest of selling clothing, the point of sales, right? Because the conversation here, the point of sales and the approach to it will be different depending of your industry. And when you're in the online e-commerce, the point of sale is everything. And all the integration with all the other functions that you need to deliver a product to a client once the purchase is made, right? And that allowed me to do so. But this Namas AI, this is not necessarily something that I'm going to apply all around the process. It's a specific tool that allows me to do something within my business process and to be efficient so that I don't overload myself, especially in the idea of staying on the path, staying active, right? If if I decide to, and this is now the pull that I have, if I'm not careful, I'm going to fall into the lab trap and look at all the cycle, all the things that this new tool, this goodie can do for me. But for now, for my business process, I went in there and I knew exactly what I was looking at, the problem that I needed to solve in my organization. You saw that I have a branding history for my clothing. I have a strategy. I have a process. The course that I'm taking is looking at setting up the service, the production, and the point of sales. These are applicable at all time. And these are important because, again, they have an interaction with the client's journey. Everything that you see in the middle here in the red is basically the back and forth interaction with these different things. And how does that, or where does that fall into the next part of our process when we're looking at our client journey? Well, here it is. At least this is how I see the action, the sequence, and the tools that I will need to fulfill this journey. Coming in, you already know that when we're marketing online, and this is specifically following this framework of doing this online, we are following 3 steps in the whole business process or implementation. We need to acquire people, and this is when all the marketing tools, following the strategy and the conversation, the branding, the structure has been put in place and is being rolled out. That has the goal of bringing them to our point of sales for conversion, where we take care of the client, we onboard them, and then after that, we bring them to retention. This is the simplest roadmap or customer journey format that we've been discussing, right? That follows certain things, certain steps, right? At first, for the client to be acquired, he has to be interested. Then we have to make that sell. He has to make that purchase. But it doesn't stop there. Often enough, a lot of people that came into my meetings and were very much concerned with automation were only concerned with these 2 steps most of the time. I need to promote and I need to sell. But what happens next? And this is also the defining trade factor between a good coach and a bad coach, a good leader and a bad leader. Because the bad leader doesn't think about what happens to these people who have shown me her trust, have given me their interest. A good leader knows, okay, if these people do so, I am now responsible to take them to these steps. I have planned the next step, right? And I've done so so that I can retain these customers, keep them. Because if I'm spinning the wheel every day, I'm acquiring, closing, but not having any follow up for lateral sales, for upsells, and any other type of opportunity that comes with a sustained and prolonged relationship with the clients, then what am I doing? Right? The closer mentality is not what we need to have at all the time. The closer mentality is a switch that we turn on and then we turn off. We only turn it on when the client is going into objection handling or objection and we are going into handling or turn on the closing. But if the experience has been properly set from the beginning, remember what we're doing. We're offering a relationship. We're not closing a sale. The sale happens naturally. The relationship happens naturally. I like you, you like me, let's go out naturally. We like the same thing, let's hang and go to the same thing, more, better, naturally. We naturally make friends. So should we make naturally the business connections or relationship that we're trying to build? When AI came about, there was this conversation. How many of us are going to love AI enough to not want to talk to people? And we have this balance right now. As much as we love talking and using AI, we need the community to share our achievements, to share our understanding, to share the passion, to grow into that human interaction. And the more AI takes over, the more sought after will be this real time interaction and expertise. Very important. Client care, community immersion, right? And then foundation legacy. I am interested in a product. I buy, I experience the product. I am immersed in the culture of the product. And I pass on this passion to my friends, my family, generation after generation. And this is when we reach the status of brand. When I came into this interest of marketing, I wanted to be, again, I'm probably not the only one. I wanted to be the next Gucci, the next Ralph Lauren. And I knew that these were legacy companies. They didn't start yesterday. Their clientele is legacy clientele. So this concept was seeded in my approach from the beginning. I needed a strong brand. I needed a strong retention factor. But again, I only thought that it was the same thing. Branding will do it all. No, there's a lot more that comes to it, right? Beyond the production, this journey is important, right? So same at the interest, as I showcased in the conversation, we're building that brand, we're introducing, sorry, we're building that relationship. We're introducing the values, the mission, the brand, everything. How does that equate to acquisition? It's all these call to actions, all that structure, that stacking, the trigger combo that we will decide to use to trigger that brand trust, trigger that brand interest, right? Relationship is created. Where do they go to buy? How are they processed? Is it customer friendly? How does it unfold? These are things that questions that I have to answer to myself, that I have to map beforehand. Sorry, I closed the screen by error on my side here, right? The brand experience. This is where I purchased this and I'm very happy with it because I get support, I see results, I can share it, people love it. And when I have questions, I know where others are, right? The brand experience, the relationship consolidation. What if I'm talking about community, then as a brand in your process and your setup, you're asking yourself, how did I build this community? What is the platform where they gather or where I try to gather them to give them what? More information to build in and feed in more of this interest, elaborating on this culture. Okay. And future growth, just considering lateral and upsell should be the answer, right? Because if you're with me years after years, it's not because you bought that first shirt ages ago. It's because systematically, every connection, every collection, you're there sharing, buying, making it part of your life, right? So when we're talking about client experience, when we're talking about prospect journey, these are the questions that we are trying or have rather answered. And it's not a complicated process, it's a series of logical steps that you're taking. Right? Here, for example, the sell would be where they go to close the transaction. And then right away, the type of support that they're going to be getting, including that onboarding sequence. This becomes a different segment in our process, right? If we go back to the business structure, how does that impact the business structure? Well, we have all these tools, we have all these things that we're creating. Where do they, oh, and of course, they all interact once they're set up. But if we're looking at a roadmap, again, they are set up following a certain sequence and they interact following a certain sequence, right? When we're looking at the business setup and the process setup, we're heavily looking at the branding conversation. And the branding conversation brings into the fold everything that we discussed so far. Having your brand kit ready, having marketing assets that are ready. Even if you're not creating website at this stage, well, your social media properly presented is a marketing asset. Your email, your phone, how do I get in touch with you? How do we go to the next step? Right? So you can see contact information, which is required for your social media setup. With that basic in place, you're now more than ready to go into the funnel exercises. Step 3, right? Client care, the whole structure and strategy behind those interaction. Often enough, we go as we go. However, as we scale up and we need to pass that knowledge on, there are certain steps that we need to take. Another interesting share. I had another meeting for an opportunity. Well, it's a follow-up meeting to the ones that we were discussing there. And I was asking for information for the training process so I can get up to speed and work on my own time if I was to consider this and that. And the conversation was, okay, well, we've been in in uh, in service for some time, but we have a training process that is geared to this type of environment. For the digital, we don't have a training process. So we'll have to abide by what is already in place, but we are scaling to that. All right. So this is important. What happens? All this conversation around client care, all these conversations that we have around onboarding is often enough because we haven't simply mapped out our onboarding sequence. The client signs up, perfect. He has to go to this for the training first. We meet him the first time. And this equates to certain things or certain happenings through our business setup, our service setup, our point of sale, or our client support strategy. Right? CRM right now, organizing the CRM, creating one, using one with the expertise and the knowledge is something that is now accessible to us because of AI. But we have to be able to ask it the right question, or at least describe what we're trying to achieve using the right word. Because even though AI will make sense or try to make sense of what you are asking, right? If you are not asking it the right way with the right words, with the right intentions, following a set process that you're trying to achieve, It's going to take time for you and it to go through these layers of unanswered questions. Okay. Now with these framework, with these map, we can say we're trying to do this. This is the part of the business setup that we're concerned with. What would be the optimum tool or strategy or setup to proceed with? We would get the information and we would have to apply it. Okay. Very important. Same thing. Content, we are in love with AI a lot because it allows us to create a lot of content, but it also will allow us to create a lot of business processes, business setups. So we need to understand, okay, well, what is the roadmap that we're following? Where are we in this process? What does that question equates to get the right, to be agile? Or for us not to ask that question to ourselves again when we're actively going through the workflow of our CRMs, the workflow of the CRM, right? I'm going to say it the third time because actually there's the CRM and there's the workflow around it, right? Because the CRM is when the client has responded to something that it activates. This is when we start managing that relationship. And there's a workflow to get them to the CRM, and there's a workflow to follow after the CRM, after they are in the CRM. Right? If your process setup forces you to have two CRM, a point of sale and a relationship building type managing CRM, then that has to be in your business structure. So you yourself understand, okay, when they come to this gate, great, they're engaged in this segment of the conversation. This is the workflow that this CRM will get them through. This is the journey. These are the questions that I've answered for them. And when they're done, I take them and bring them here. And again, they follow a new process around this CRM. Our CRM, our network marketing CRM and Now site is actually very simple. Now that I'm being forced to talk to clients that have a larger scale operation. Remember, when we're solopreneurs, the only team that we're worried about is us and how we make the AI work. But when you're talking to an organization that has potentially 10 employees and is looking for a structure for some that are doing sales and some that are doing marketing and how this all interact, well, the conversation becomes different. Type of CRM becomes different. The sales CRM is a lot more complicated than a marketing CRM because then there are numbers and values and conversion points if it's an integrated point of sale and point of billing, invoicing and such. So that becomes a lot more complicated than what we're looking at. The marketing one is a peer-to-peer reaction, the workflow bringing you to that point of sale. And from that, bring you back to the marketing or the support, the community, right? All these points must have a process and a system behind. Why? Because these process and these systems are made to follow that prospect journey, to handle that prospect at the point of time in that journey. Make sense for everybody so far? Any questions?
No, it's kind of quiet in the outfield here.
If you have questions, if you don't have questions, then I have questions for you to ask yourselves. And this is the second part of the document, right? In it, in this case, particularly since we're interested and we're going into our CRM, right? All these conversations have impact, right? And I tried my best to put this here. It has different terms, but it's the same foundational concept or steps each time. The interest, the awareness. What are the tools in my structure that are getting activated? For what intent, right? Social media ads, lead magnets, and how does that impact or integrate throughout the CRMs? The consideration, the conversion, the onboarding, the support, the community, the legacy, right? This is the in-between zone. There's a strategy for that. Okay. So keep this grid in mind. If you're not sure how this prospect journey impacts your use of CRM or your workflow, this is always a good reference. These, in fact, are good reference. I'm using them right now and I'm seeing the fruits of them when I'm involved into an interaction with a client, right? Same here. These are the questions. How are we attracting attention? Yeah, by Facebook. Okay, cool. But what's the strategy? The follow-up strategy for this channel? At the beginning, when we started this, before we had the very powerful social media tool that we have with my AI now, because it is indeed powerful, allowing you to create that speed. Right now, you've noticed I am starting to post. So those who are seeing the uh, the post that I'm doing, I know Facebook again has this different way of handling algorithm, and I'm dipping my toe again in it, trying to understand what it's doing, what is the cause and effect, what are the numbers, the statistics of organic interaction before I look at other things, right? And at the beginning, I used to say that when we think about funnel strategy on a larger scale, the first funnels that we have are our social media page, because this is where we start interacting. This is where we're trying to acquire, or we have the opportunity to acquire. Before we were given the social to lead tool, the gymnastic around the like and what followed would have been complicated. But now you like me, I like you. I can go to your page, see what you're about. I can take your information, bring it in the system, get a profile avatar, and from there start getting you to the inside my CRM, the first attempt, sending you the first direct CRM link or conversion link, right? The booking link or whatnot. That was the workflow before. We had to do this manually. And these were in response to the steps of a natural funnel. I need to acquire people, so I have to have their interest, which is the likes. Then I need to go to their page, build that relationship, start talking to them, give them the experience of my person, and then invite them to join, to do this, to do that as the next step. Following exactly that process, it's the same workflow or sales flow that we're applying when we're having our conversation, right? What are we doing to educate, to build trust? Now, that question has a direct answer in our messaging approach. To build trust, we know the trigger, combo, stacking structure that we will be referring through the post, through the emails campaign or the first stage of them, through the hero section of our website. And in there are instructions leading them to do things. And that brings them to a sequence of action within a certain CRM. For example, booking meetings, that's a CRM. We don't have a lot of control over it other than setting time and availability and information around it. And the rest of the acquisition, conversion, and follow-up service happens. We get the notification. We just have to attend. That's a CRM. It's an automated one. We don't have to control it, but it's handling a client and managing the relationship between the user and the owner of this service. Okay. How do we close the deal? Coming back to that conversation, what is the point of sale? What is the experience that starts at the point of sale? And if it's the point of care, what is the strategy already outlined in the case of return policy? Is that I don't intend my product to fail, but if they fail, I need to have a care policy. Some are dry cut, final sell, your problem, test it in the store. If you leave, it's yours. That could be, say, as stated as you standing behind your product. I don't need to stand behind my service. My product never breaks. Don't need a policy. It will never break, right? But is that true? I've yet to see a product that doesn't break or that doesn't have some kind of defect that needs to be handled, right? So very important. And what the surprise is or the impact on the clientele is, remember when you had something that you thought the company would not do for you, and then they did. What happened next? I never knew, for example, that, well, I'm not sure if they still do this uh, right now, but Nike had a very gracious return policy at one point. If you bought their shoe and you kept all the original boxing and whatnot, and it was an original pair, but that was guaranteed for 2 years or 4 years, say the um, the oh, la semelle, how do you say that? The bottom of the shoe there.
The soul.
The sole, yeah. If the sole is, for example, guaranteed for 2 years, and within that year the sole breaks, well, you return the shoe in the box, and they return you the equivalent or the new edition of. I'm not sure if they were doing this, right? I got to understand that. Why? Because I was on the basketball team, and basketball shoes will wear and tear, and they have guarantees, and my guys were having a field day with that, right? Forget playing on the court where it became a fashion statement. They would play recycle, play a new one, and they'll put a new. I was they're working the system. But when I discovered that for a while, not to promote that the brand, I was all like, well, you know what? All of my shoes from now on, I'll do it because it has a guarantee, and I might get it better. And guess what? I told it to other people. Legacy, foundation, building. There was a genius in that, a policy that keeps on giving to everybody involved. Ask me how many shoes I returned, how many Nikes I bought since, and how many I returned. I don't know how many I bought, but I know that I returned zero, and I definitely bought plenty. I always bought it with that same, oh yeah, if eventually it breaks, I let me keep the box and such. Right? I'm not so much of a sneakerhead, but that's an application, a direct application of that. How do you build belonging and loyalty with that type of attention to detail? Right? These are the questions. And they are part of your customer journey because they impact your process. The process of return is impacted by such a policy. The cost of it is factored into the business setup, in the business process as well. And these are larger examples, but they apply to us even more so at a smaller scale. Because remember, the whole conversation that we're having is to build structure, create speed so we can duplicate, teach, pass it on, whether it's for internal use only or for a B2B, same principle applies. And we are always looking at scaling up. So as big as you are, as small as you are adhering to this basic structures. That's why it's a no-brainer when you saw it. Everybody, oh, it makes sense. But okay, all these terms are there in your face. It makes sense. But then when you look at your process, where does these terms start happening? And when they do, how does that impact the client's journey that you had thought about? Because we all have thought about our journey and their client's journey. We just haven't fine-tuned the details in between, right? So when you go ask the AI, how do I create this CRM strategy around my uh, client interaction for these purposes, you have to understand where these answers will fit in your larger process, right? We're a team of many. It's the AI has redefined for me the term or the understanding of jack of all trade or Marvick, right? Because at the end, a jack of all trade had to know how to do a lot of things. Now the jack of all trade has to know how to prompt the AI, which AI to prompt, when to prompt it, and what to expect from it. At least the jack of all trade and the Marvick in the marketing world with all these AI tools. Think about a strategy. If you understand the process behind it and the different tools that you will need, you will have the work load lifted from you by the AI so you can apply it and see. This falls into that agileness that we need to acquire. This falls into this lean approach at marketing. Certain tools are useful to a certain degree. After I can fall into the trap lab. I have to be careful. I will have time to bathe into that new world. But when I'm in this zone, when I'm keeping the flow, I have to stay focused. Coming back to that point that also was covered during the last transition, noise to signal or signal to noise, right? Those just connected for me because when you're going, for example, in the creative space, the passion that you have, the drive is that signal. I'm going in there to create things. But if you're not focused, then a lot of things can come in and become noise, right? So you went from being very focused to lost in this world of possibility. Same thing. You have a very clear objective, but then when you go in, you start bringing all these emotions. Why? Because simply there might be boxes that were left unchecked in the process that you're supposed to follow, in the interaction and the journey that you're trying to take the client on. This is also why it's important to have that in the fold, that in full view each time we go into that business conversation, right? Having that process, we can't have it on the board behind the client, but in our mind's eye, behind the brain, when we're having the conversation, we should always be able to evaluate, going back to this, where we are. Because we're going to be going down and up this chain of event once they're set up. They're set up to interact in order and back and forth. That's how you optimize, right? We did this one end to the other. This is the result. Let's bring it back to the setup, to the process, to the service implementation, to the point of sale. And that reinforces the client, builds more, the client support builds more relationship, right? The client was introduced to the brand via these channels. These channels are very reactive. These are very appropriate. We should have a whole strategy around that approach. Digital card, for example, strong presentation, clear offers, openings on potential questions or more qualification steps for the clients, markers for us to introduce the conversation to lead to that conversion. And the conversion is not a sale, is a relationship that starts. How do we manage that? Right? Being available after sale, for example, is something. It means that you have a calendar for these after sale bookings. That might be the same for the calendar that you have for the sales booking. That might be the same for the calendar that you have with your team for experience field feedback and R&Ds. That's a lot of calendars, right? And this is why segmentation comes into play. I need to separate these different lines of conversation, lines of action, lines of processes. Last time with Martha's share, uh, I have this overall umbrella company, medical service. I offer service, monitoring service. I offer products. These are different client, prospect, journey, experience, sequence of process that will follow, different brand interaction. In the end, should lead to the same, a successful brand relationship that boils to foundational legacy interactions, right? So very important. I would recommend everybody to have this. And I'm going right back in building again mine. And the reason why all this started is because I'm in the revamp life, professionally, brand wise, and all that follows these steps. What is my new brand? What is the new process? What is the new setup? What is the new service outline? How do I manage my point of sale? How do I manage these new interactions? How does that impact my calendar? How do I monitor all this and optimize not only the relationship, but the workflow? What is the feedback that I got from the customer journeys when I'm marketing here? For example, this concern that we have with the likes and the interaction is a direct proof, social proof that our business conversation is making its mark. Well, at least this is how we are trained to perceive it. There are different aspects coming to the amount, but in essence, this is what we're doing. It's also part of the marketing strategy, right? And this is meant to put forward the brand in light of the client's interest. So these are moving back and forth, and this is what is happening in our mind. We need to put that on the wall, put the writing on the wall. And then when you're doing this, understand where you are in your process, traveling back and forth. Because this is where you start optimizing. This is where you start focusing on the outcome of this process. This is where everything that we're going to be doing next in the CRM will make sense. Our CRM is a process, it's a marketing one. We have this strategy, we have this conversation. They will be coming in or directly organic from the interests. And the next stop will be bring them to our point of sales, or they are coming from the point of sales from a different CRM that has its own approach, right? Our affiliate program opportunity, whatever it is that we're marketing, has its own structure. They come from there, or leads that were given, they come from there. We have to plug it into our CRM and know the process of marketing that we are following, right? One of the good things with Nowside is that we're worrying about these three and this. But as you expand or as you come in, you will need to bring those. For example, in the asset conversation that came before, one of the asset list that I started hinting at being important was your income stream asset. Where do I go to give you the money for this conversation? Where do I go to buy in? Because that has its ramification, the dollar value that is counted and the follow-up that is owned because of that trust and that commitment that is given, right? So it has its own framework. When you buy, this is what happens for the delivery process, for the CRM integration, for the feedback and confirmation on you receiving your product. Once that is done, when you're not buying, you're interacting with the service on a customer base brand relationship. That becomes a different type of tool that you might be using, right? We will end up using a lot of tools, which are required, but they specifically will fall into specific sections, right? And specific use. Okay, Robert. Robert will be leaving us a little bit earlier, but actually, we're at the end of the conversation. We have 5 more minutes, so I'm pretty sure that there has to be some content, some shares, things that you have question on or that you want me to elaborate. Go ahead, Rita.
Hi, and
Hi.
and thank you. I lost it. All right. So my question would be about the looking at the chart you just had up there with
Mhm,
the black coloring. Okay, so my question says in the umbrella scenario, like you were speaking about Martha,
mhm,
if if you offer many products, I do as well. So
mhm.
the starting from the business setup and going through that, when you get to the care after care sales, so I would imagine the business branding, all of that's going to be different because there's different products. However,
Yes.
when I get to the care after care sales, from there through point of sale to experience, immersion, and
What are we? You're reading, you're looking at the red lines, or are you looking at these?
I'm looking at the red lines.
The red line? Okay. Let
Yeah.
me put this in perspective then. Oh,
Okay.
no, finish your question, then I'll put things in perspective because I was wanting to make sure that I followed the points line for this question. So,
Okay.
when you're looking at that flow, what
hmm
is? Mhm,
So, so the product, the branding and all of that is going to be different for each product. I understand that. But
mhm.
now the customer experience, that is all going to be the same path because it's still customer service. It's still aftercare. So it's not like I have to create a whole new series. I can just use that same care package, so to speak.
Absolutely. Because this is what we're doing. When you have multiple services or products that
Mhm.
you have to set up, right? At the root, your umbrella company has that conversation and that positioning. So when they come in, they are building the relationship with the umbrella company.
Oh,
So the umbrella company will continue, right? So for example, me, I offer marketing solution, I offer business solutions. So you experience that service through the conversation, the need, and at the end, when we're done, well, in the meantime, we have this community where we talk about everything of concerns for businesses, whether it's marketing and solutions, right? The newsletter approach. Remember when we were doing the segmentation through the CRM, I outlined that we had 3 lists, right? And the happening usually, the one that would fluctuate a lot would be the middle one, the conversion. Because you come into this general list that I'm marketing, and through this list, I'm going to send you offers,
mm,
right? A series of offers for different products. Now, depending on which product you're going to take, you're going to go into CRM. Well, that product itself technically has its own branding, its
mm,
own strategy, its own marketing approach, its own aftercare process. So there's duplication. When you have multiple services or product, the only thing that you're doing is repeating this for each level, right? The company, we're no longer looking at just one offer, one client. We have a larger business set up. We have a larger business process taking into account each segments of our offers, each segments of our products. And for each one of these, we now go into the same fundamental steps. We need to set up the service. We need to set up the point of sale. We need to set up the client support. And when that is done, they come back into the general happy customer pool, right? You like polo. Well, you don't just buy their shoes, you buy their pants, you buy their hats. You just don't buy boys' clothes, you buy women clothes, adult. All these are different products, right? They have their own process. And in the end, we end up in the happy customer, right? This is something that's so true for brands that have diversify their portfolio of not only products but industry, right? For example, when Apple crossed over to Beats,
Mhm.
when actually, well, even taking it back, that was a masterful branding on their part. When they just crossed over from computers to MP3 players, which were already in the market before theirs hit the market. But the branding that they brought in made it like they invented that game. And it was only a response to a growing customer or a growing industry.
Mhm.
The MP3, the digital market, the digitalization of music, right? So they have their computers, they had their iPod, and then they had all these different products that all had different line of care. The service that you get when you buy a notebook is not the same that you get when you buy an iPad or whatnot, at least from what I got from the user's experience. I'm not a big Apple fan. I am a fan of their marketing strategy. I am the fan of their branding and their business approach, not so much of their ethics, right? Big corporation, this is what I hope will never happen to any of us in this room. As we grow, we should not lose our soul because when you lose the human part, you start breaking what is the most important, right? The relationship between the client. The more layers between you and the client you put, the more they become a number, the more they feel it. And you can see that's always often the backlash of big brands. They become so big that we become numbers and they be like, we tell you what to do and you do what you do. You have no choice. Who are you going to buy from? And this is when you have the customer boycott age starting. Well, we won't buy from you. They're going to drop your numbers. We're like, oh my God, I forgot. I need to take care of my clients. It's fundamentals also for us at the beginning. When I was, and this will be the last year, but when I was starting my brand, I was so concerned about big numbers that I wasn't, and I regret that so much. If any of my friends are listening, I apologize. Please come back and buy because I had so many friends that wanted to buy that one t-shirt. And I was like, it's not ready yet. Wait, it's not ready yet. Wait. If I now count the amount of times I said no, and I had also said yes and sustained that relationship, I would have regular buyers. Why? Because the ethic of the brand would have not have changed. I want to give quality product to people that like it, a product that has a soul, a brand that has an identity, and I want that identity to grow as a person, always positively. So if you saw interest in that basic conversation, then you would have been with me now.
Mhm.
But I didn't. I was like, this is gonna be so big. I didn't know where I was in the process. I was already here in the repetition. A lot of us coming to in the business and will go from the business idea, not even the branding, to the point of sale. I have a business idea. I need a funnel. What happens next? I didn't think about that. But to get to the funnel, all of what is happening next would have been already outlined. Often enough, we lose track of that just by we know that from the business idea to the funnel, there has to be a lot of things happening in and around, but we lose sight of it. We go directly to these values. So never forget, I have a great business idea. This is the business process I need to set up or go through the check marks. Why? Because that follows the prospect journey as well, the experience, the introduction, and such. Go ahead, Daria.
I think this is probably the reason why, people like me have analysis paralysis because, I know for every action we need to be ahead at least 2, 3 steps because like you said, once we get done with one point, what's the next? Once you get your funnel, you got to already understand where you're taking them, where you're going. And if you don't know because you're creating it as you go, then it's like, okay, I can't open up my business for another 3 to 6 months because I don't know, uh, I know what my end goal is and I can backwards plan, but then going through each step is going to take some time and analysis and conversations. And just like you said with your example, oh, I'm not ready. I can understand that because, like, yeah, I don't have the shirt. It's not perfect. It's not ready. And then what am I going to do after you get the t-shirt and you like
Mhm.
it? What's the process of getting it to them? Yeah, I got the design, but the business behind this design is not ready. I'm already getting interest, but I don't have the systems to support this sale that you said you want. So it goes back to that and it's like, okay, how do I get started? When do I get started? How long are people, what's a reasonable time for people to wait? And how much time do I need to give myself realistically to get some of these systems in place before I lose the customer and their interests?
Okay, I'm gonna answer the best I can. Because you mentioned two things, if I remember, or one important thing. And this is also something that I positioned at the beginning. We need to be agile, right? So we need to respond to the customer pool if there is. If we didn't have that ready when it's happening, we have to be aware of where this should go next, right? Because, for example, like I said, we start here, we jump to the point of sale, and we get the offer. And then we have to reverse engineer the rest. Okay, fine. How many times do we do that? Or how many times will we do that? Once, technically. The first time this happens, if I came in here, I had this great idea, and this is what we do with NowSite. I put it in the business program. It gives me the business conversation. It has a customer form. I create it. I have my marketing asset, and I can put it out there, and somebody sees it, and they love it, and they click on it. I wasn't expecting it, or I wanted it. I wanted it. To be fair, I wanted it. If I had expected it, I would have planned everything before even pressing the go button. Even the first email welcome, even the first five emails, which we talk about. You set up your business market, there's a form there because you have to have at least that first part before you roll it out, right? So if you press the button before rolling certain things out and it happens, great, you made something happen, right? But the way you now will handle this will be how you start not reversed, but engineering the process that you haven't. And it's the same sense that I said I regret because, yes, I should have, the moment where I decided to say, this is what I'm doing, I was involved. I was in the clinch. This is the marketing. And I never stopped saying I was not going to be doing it or I'm not doing it. So I'm still at that clinch, right? And the moment somebody said, I want it, then if I wasn't ready, I'm going to go through that one journey with them so that I'm ready for the next one. And while I'm going to that, I'm mapping out this process because in the end, whether you flip it upside down or whether you come, if you very rarely do we come in. Actually, I was about to say something. Well, very rarely do we come into the business client support directly. Very rarely. I said that I double took myself because I'm coming into this business in this. We came together from a relationship and we're not exchanging funds. But this is important for me on so many levels. Marketing wise, social proof of what I have to offer to the rest of the world. Right. And what happens now, I'm forced to go over the branding strategy and the marketing. And notice I have not made any offer. Even this one here, I was about to take it down because it's going around the different CRM. But I'm letting the interest here know that I am available. And I know that, hey, I need to practice. I need to have something, a process set up behind this, specifically for this tool and this room and this conversion process. Right? So yes, often enough, following the passion and the pull or the opportunity or the happening, we will come in at one point, right? I had a client once who inherited a network marketing infrastructure, something that was legacy, something that was worth a lot of money. She came into the business with all that. But was she able to? Did she understand what this was? Not necessarily. Very so she offered, she went for the help and the experience to help her guide through this process. So yes, we might come into this at different points, but in the end, we will have to put this on the wall. And if we are responding to clients' interest and conversion before any of this, if you bought my product before my brand was ready, wow, kudos. But that's going to force me to go back there and be like, after this sale, this won't happen again. Tomorrow, my brand is up. How did you react to that happening? How did you take advantage of that? That's my regret. It should not be the regret here. We're agile. We have these tools. They will create things for us. We can go out and test them. If we're in testing phase because we haven't thought about everything before, we know that. And every reaction is used to optimize. And this is when this red thing is happening because these are interactions. It's not a set path, but it's things that happen. The business is interacting with the interest of the client. If the interest of the client changes, the business interest will shift. The process is made to cater to the interest of the business, right? And the process is in line with the branding. So these are ongoing interaction. This is your organization
Hold on, listen.
taking life. This is usually where you, as the owner, and the brand controller or the optimization dwell, monitoring the happenings, right? This is where analytics comes into play. When these are interacting, when the post has been made in marketing to capture the interest, we're looking at the analytics to see if the conversation is bearing fruit. If not, then we're going to come back and reassess this. Maybe the point of sale or the care sale, bad comment, we're going to have to come back, right? So these values technically should always be on the board or in the forefront of our mind. And if we have these values and we have checked up all these boxes, then we go to the next tier, which is really working our CRM because now there's no questions left unturned.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize the time is way over, so I appreciate you addressing it, and I'll see
No,
y'all tomorrow. I appreciate it.
it's always a pleasure. See you tomorrow. Food
All
for thought.
right, bye, y'all.
Hey, Virgil, I just wanted to compliment you on the, and I did write it in the chat, but and I don't know if you read the chats or not, but I can really see your design, the I make image, and
Mhm.
it's clear. And maybe we can discuss that at a later time in terms of, and I know you did a program, a webinar on it. So it just has to do with that clarity, how crisp it is. So we'll do that at another time, but I just wanted to note that. That's all.
Okay, absolutely. Send me an email and off schedule we'll get together. Why not? We have a relationship going. This is what we're supposed to do, and we can exchange. And there's also a few things I want to learn from you directly. That command of the voice and that character that you have. Sometimes I'm like, okay, this is a trait that I need to learn. So I will from you directly. So yes,
Good.
let's get that interaction going. You are part of my like Robert's inner circle, you're mine. And you guys can have access to me. Yes, it's a little complicated for me to manage time right now, but I'm open to conversation directly on my email, or you have my WhatsApp, I think, in one of my cards there. You can send me WhatsApps. I'm very open to that, and we'll build that relationship. Okay?
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.